live to Facebook. Rick has pressed the record button, which means officially we have started We Are All Bats Talkaoke Living with Risk, or Living with Ricks, as Rick, our sound engineer, has pointed out today. I don't know actually if you're officially a sound engineer, Rick. I've just given you that title for today. Who we got joined? We've got Katie has joined us. At the moment, Katie's a big K. But if you pop your video on, Katie, we'll be able to see your face. We'll be able to see your reactions to some of the things. Take a risk, exactly. Take a risk. Pop your video on. We've also got We Are All Bats, our lovely co-host with the Listening Arts channel. They're all. Have we got We Are All Bats there? Hello. We've got, We Are All Bats have unmuted themselves, but I don't know if I can hear them yet.
Well, have we got them turned up?
We might not have you turned up. No, this is a mood. Let's do a little test. Shall we go? Katie, are you able to say something to us so we can make sure that we're speaking?
Hello.
We can hear you loud and clear. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
We're doing a talkaboke about risk today. So I don't know if anyone who around the table, maybe Katie in cyberspace, maybe We Are All Bats in cyberspace. What are the risks that you've taken today? Maybe do you like taking risks? What's your favorite kind of risk to take? We can take this anywhere, guys. This is your talk show, and we'll get people in as they sort of come and go. So let's kick it off. What do people want to talk about? Oh, I can see like a little hand behind me, Mikey.
Well, Evie, I was...
Are we not live on Facebook yet, or are we?
We are live on Facebook. That's
excellent.
No, I was just saying I was going to get these beers, and I was at the same time trying to promote the event because we've been very busy this week, so I've only done it all the last 15 minutes. And I was walking down the road looking at my phone, trying to message people, and there was a woman driving up the road. And then I looked up and I saw this car in front of me. But instead of her being angry and upset, she's like, go on with you cheeky little thing on the phone in the middle of the road. You know, she was just laughing. And I was laughing. So I think, I don't know, sometimes you can get away with taking a risk, can't you? And sometimes you get to...
So possibly we actually, maybe we like people who take risks. So do risks pay... I took a risk then by trying to speak faster than my tongue was moving. What I wanted to say is, do we take risks that pay off? Like, do you have a risk that you paid off and you're glad you've taken? What do we think, Internet channel, people in the studio? I got Margot over here.
I was just wondering, like, because what you said, Mikey, of course, I think I was anticipating like a really terrible conclusion of this story, although I knew you didn't die in a car accident because you're sitting here telling the tale, so it wasn't that bad. But I think sometimes we take a risk, and like at work or somewhere where you kind of put yourself out there on the line, and you're like, well, okay, maybe they'll fire me if I say this, but I'm just going to do it anyway because it's too, I don't know, too important for my internal integrity. And then they go like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. And you kind of take a risk and it pays off. And then I think it really pays off in general to be that kind of different person in the room.
Okay, so maybe we might take a risk. We might alienate people. Was this at work?
No, I was just like ripping up what Mikey said, but I think at work as well. I mean, sometimes, you know, we say things. What am I referring to in particular? I think like today I was in this meeting talking about migrants in theatre, and I just thought, you know, there were some people from venues invited, and some of the migrants in theatre people were saying like, okay, so what are you going to do after this meeting? So they took a risk, right, because they're like big programming venues, and the venues were like, well, actually I'm going to do this thing, and I'm like, do you know what, rock on.
Oh, nice.
You don't get, put yourself on the line.
Gonna do, what do you mean gonna do this thing? What thing?
Are they going to, for instance, like do more, actually what they're going to do, they're going to put more effort into programming current migrant work in the theatres, or they're going to have a meeting with their network and just agree some concrete actions. So yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but you did ask. So
No, it's good. So I think it's always good to have some examples as well. So we've been talking about risk today. Hello to David who's joined. Welcome. Take a risk. Put your video on so we can see you, so we can see your exciting face. There we go. You're very dramatically lit, David.
Hello.
David, have you taken a risk today at all? I'm just going to unmute you.
Oh, you can't unmute.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Yes, I did take some risk. I went to the German website. So I have to credit all 9. This is the risk I took today. Is that interesting? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. You don't think so? You haven't taken a risk today? Okay, so what was
Yeah,
it,
but
David?
it's a big risk. It's a big risk. We are doing a short film about. We are doing the gay versions of the Christ birth. So we might alienate a lot of people. But anyway, we made Jesus gay.
Okay, so you made Jesus gay. Well, this is part of a, that might be quite a big risk. How's it gone down?
And sorry. Can you repeat?
Did people like the change to Jesus that you made?
We don't know yet. We haven't filmed it yet. We are just in preparation for the moment. But basically, he started with make Judea great again. So basically, he's a take up on Donald Trump and Jesus. So there is like the 3 queers instead of the 3 wise. So we'll see how it goes. He's on the doing. So I will let you know in the end of December when the film is finished.
I'm gonna get Katie. You had some thoughts on that. You popped up.
Yeah, I think Ricky Gervais has made God gay years ago in one of his stand-ups. Been pretty popular as far as I know. Showed it to a few of my friends as well.
Was it a popular change? Did people embrace it? Did people have opinions about it?
Well, he used the religious book to prove his point, so yeah, everyone loved it.
Okay, so and that's quite a good example of a risk. For example, we've got God being gay, Jesus being gay. Are there any other historical figures we think that we might want to rewrite throughout history, possibly to make them gay? To maybe, I don't know, what else could we do, Mikey?
Well, I mean, Alexander the Great, who has the advantage of being a real person. He was kind of, as far as I know, what I've read about it. He was kind of gay, but he was not gay. Like there's no kids on the line. He fucked guys, but I don't think he was gay as such, because his sexuality was constructed in a slightly different, more, I feel like, aggressive way than, what our current understanding of what gay is.
Alexander the Great, was he gay? Was he not? What do people think? Has anyone else heard of this?
I think that there was no such concept of gay in the 5th century BC. It was just like what you do. I suppose if you're Alexander the Great, you do what you want.
Or who you want, for example. Margot.
Who you want, yeah.
I'll propose not to kind of really focus on the Roman empires here, but I was reading that when the Caesars and all the mighty emperors, because they had access to everything, there was some, I can't remember his name, I can't remember which one this was now, but he had a swimming pool. And
Was it Biggus Dickus?
Stickers.
No, that's a character from Monty Python.
No. I'm trying to move beyond the Anglo-Saxon field of reference. But anyway, so this guy had a swimming pool, and he asked to have little babies, toddlers, swimming in it because that excited him. That kind of gave him a new kind of sensation that he hasn't felt, and because he could do everything or ask for everything, and he just did.
That was his request.
But was that considered risky? I don't know. People were just like, "Wow,
Risky
he's an
behaviour.
emperor, so."
I guess is it risky? I mean, could the toddlers swim? That would be the main concern that I would have.
Children can naturally swim, can they? Or some, I mean, does anybody know that? I don't know.
Do children actually swim? Do you just have to sort of throw them in?
If they're small enough, they swim like first couple months. If you continue keeping them in the water, they continue knowing how to swim into their adulthood. But I heard someone around my family, they were training till about 4 or 5 years old. Then they stopped. So by the time the child was about 9 or 10, couldn't swim anymore either. So there is some kind of a breaking point in the middle.
Okay, so you've got, so maybe you should take a risk with children and throw them in the water early just to make sure that they can keep on swimming.
Many parents do it in some places, actually. There were groups back in Lithuania where parents used to take their babies to keep them in the water.
Okay, so we've got some swimming babies. What else have we talked about so far? We've talked about being gay historical figures, rewriting gay historical figures. We've got Gillian. Was it Gillian or Gillian? New to the Gillian. I think have you got any thoughts about risk, about gay emperors, about swimming? You might need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. When the dog was a puppy, she fell into the water and we wanted to see if she could swim, and she could, but she really hates it. So risk doesn't necessarily pay off, but we take risks all the time. Every single thing we do is a bit of a risk, I guess. So swimming is, not any worse than crossing the road.
Okay, so swimming's not any worse than crossing a road. Are there any risks that we're unwilling to take? I mean, we've got the bats here on the channel, but we haven't yet heard from the bats. Katie's got a hand up, and then maybe we can hear from bats as well. So, Katie.
Talking about risks we are unwilling to take, I think the most common one from my observation would be the risk to change, risk for a different perspective. A lot of people I've met it's one risk. People will jump with a parachute sooner before they're willing to try a different opinion, even for a few minutes, to see how their thinking changes. It seems to be very, sometimes physical risk or risk from action seems to be perceived as a lesser risk than a risk of changing opinion or changing the mindset. For some reason, people seem to be very, very afraid of that.
Okay, so you're saying, people actually maybe are quite happy to change physically, maybe they'll go to the gym, maybe they'll cut their hair, but actually mentally we're quite slow to change. Do people...
Yeah, I think it's like throughout the history, we can see that as technology advanced for the last 100 years, technology always goes first, and then we kind of lag behind with our acceptance of it. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, spending hours in front of a computer was pretty much the worst thing you could do, like in eyes of your parents. And now the whole thing is upside down. So, and those who stayed at the computers, now half of them are good programmers and with good jobs. So sometimes, these risks are very hard to weigh. And at the same time, like, we know the change is inevitable, yet we always avoid it at any cost. I would love to figure out why.
Okay, so Katie thinks that maybe we'll find it quite hard to mentally change our opinions. Margot has a point to add to it.
I prepare of people spending time on computer and how now it's like a possible career. It's a shame that Fatima is not here with us to shed some, I mean, I feel like the British government took a risk there, which kind of backfired in a really funny way.
Yeah, do you want to explain a bit more about who Fatima is?
I think everyone knows who.
Does everyone know who Fatima is?
Yeah.
Gosh, yes, everyone's nodding. It's everyone nodding.
Although she's not called Fatima, apparently.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just so funny. I think it just kind of goes back to this thing if you're really super powerful and important, you would just do risky shit, which normally people get told off by or fined for doing and that kind of stuff. Exactly, they definitely get that button, and you just don't care. Take a risk. Fuck it. What's the worst that can happen? I'm just the British government. I'm just going to use whatever picture I want for whatever campaign. Done.
I've got Mikey behind us with a point, and then
I saw it
Katie.
in a different way, and I was surprised at the backlash because I felt what the British government was saying is, come on, you kind of classical ballet dancers, you need to do some, you need to get a bit more technological here. You can't just be prancing around to Swan Lake. You've got to incorporate some technological element into your shtick. You've got to, as Katie was saying, with these are the times, it's like a ballet dancer, it could be like, I mean, I've seen so many dance performances where you've got kind of body sensing technology that plays sounds or plays videos, you know, based on your bodily movements. That's the kind of shit that Fatima should be experimenting with, and not just doing classical ballet, which is boring. If anyone's been to a classical ballet, it is boring.
I once went to the ballet with my parents. I was very lucky that they took me, and then half an hour through, I did turn around to them and say, "When is the talking started?" So I was quite disappointed when I found it would. But it was very nice. I think that's an aside. Margot, you have a point.
No, it's interesting that you kind of branched out into like a talking career as a talking host, to kind of know that. But I think the British government, like artists, don't need British government or like a you know, countrywide campaign to tell them how they can make their art a bit better, a bit more like with the times, because it's not about the shtick they're using, it's about what you're fundamentally like conveying. And I think, yeah, and you can't really, you know, like what the fuck?
So Margaret, so you think that actually the government shouldn't be telling artists what to do? Mikey is saying yes, we should empower artists to sort of expand the horizons. He thinks maybe classical ballet is a bit narrow. Katie.
And what if the reason why that ad was there was not the reason we assume it was, but the reason was to start this whole conversation in the first place. All professions versus the new ones, considering how the world is changing. I mean, what more effective way could any of you think of that the government could start such a conversation than with a huge controversy? I can't think of any. So, and that conversation I think is extremely important, because a lot of people will have to retrain, and we have to figure out where is the line. Like pretty much everyone will eventually. I mean, even now, I know my parents avoided learning to use computers for as long as they could, but now it's becoming almost inevitable for everyone to learn. So instead of waiting for something to become, you know, kind of harmful not to change, why not start the conversation earlier, considering especially the speed where we're going?
Okay, so actually, maybe it is a good thing, and I quite like your point actually about saying the government's actually trying to be controversial, because I guess all of us knew what who Fatima was as soon as we mentioned it. So is that a good risk taken by the government? Was it actually effective, even though?
Well, seems to be everyone knows about it, and we're talking about it. So yeah,
Okay,
that was the point.
Yeah, but I think the point about the controversy with this is that the British government, like whatever the message, but like they took a picture they didn't have like copyright for or something, did they?
Oh.
No, it was actually free to use. It was free to use by the time they took it.
Ah.
It was a stock photo. It was placed as a stock photo, so anyone could use it.
But I mean, I don't know if anyone has seen the Adam Curtis documentary Hypernormalization and managed to watch the whole 3 hours of it without falling asleep. But a lot of what he's talking about is this kind of like, when it comes to the Putin government of Russia, they've got this, they actually use techniques developed from performance art to confuse their audience, and their audience being the entire population of Russia. And I kind of feel that some of the messaging now coming out from Britain is adopting these same techniques of like almost kind of deliberately confusing messaging in order to confuse the populace to sort of endorse the powers that be, if that makes sense to people. You know, I mean, there's a guy, the foreign minister, I think, in Russia, Zherkov, is adopting these techniques. And funding groups that actually are at odds with each other and actually against each other to almost create a kind of fabricated controversy.
So David, you have some thoughts on that as well. You might need to unmute yourself as well before you go, David. Oh.
Stop to speak.
There we go,
okay.
David.
Okay, where is the things? Okay. Okay, the first thing replying to the computer things, like 20 years ago, I worked for a place who was called Easy Everything. It was in central London, and it was to give cheap access to the internet to people. When they did the market research, they found out that like more than 80% of the populations was willing to use the internet, but a good 50% didn't know how to use it. And they were willing to learn to pay a small sum to learn how to use it. That was in the market research. When they actually opened the shop, so basically, when they opened the shop, they employed half people just running the shop and the other half as teacher. So they were giving them like a better wages. The fact is, basically, when they open the shop, they create like kind of two queue for the people to pay, and basically nobody will go on the queue for the learning. So basically they didn't want to pay extra to be taught how to use the internet, and basically that's somehow that's why the business model failed. That's why they had to stop after like 2 years or maybe 2.5 years of exercise. Because basically the market research, when you apply to a market research and you say, yeah, I like to learn and I'm ready to pay for it, but when it's actually there, the people didn't spend the extra money to learn. That was my first point. And for Mikey's point, is the whole things of like street theater, and street theater getting into the mainstream and being presented as real news, except that is all made up.
And is that in...
That was my little point for the day.
Is that, so you're saying street theatre as being used by a particular government, or do you think that that's another effective way to try and start creating fake news?
Yeah, basically, the stuff is street theatre is used for guerrilla kind of system. So basically the footage in the end look very real because they are made with real people in real environment, except they are staged. So basically it's very, very easy to use as fake news.
Okay, so we're going maybe...
I won't give any example. But anyway, yeah, think about it.
Yeah, well, it seems like we're thinking about like how the arts gets used for bad as well as good, which maybe people have assumptions around that. Katie, you had your hand up.
Not only art, science too, and academia as well. Have any of you seen the movie that came out about a week ago called The Phenomenon?
No, I don't know what it is about.
It's a documentary with interviews from US senators and Department of Defense and so on about the UFOs, where the senators on the camera admit that a lot of it has been hidden for over 7 decades. Now, today or yesterday, there came out an article in Fox News, another mainstream media channel now, where they say that the government has done research for over 7 decades into anti-gravity technology. So now all of these stories we used to hear about UFOs, which were controversial and so on, look how the media in every government in the world, without a single exception, was used so effectively to make everyone perceive it as something unreal for almost 100 years. That's incredibly long time for people not to figure it out.
Are you talking about UFOs or vaccines there?
UFOs in this particular case. And I think what is happening now is that more and more people realize that this has been happening all the time. And the reason that it can be happening is because we are not taught how to evaluate information ourselves, how to make our own decisions, which makes us more fearful and easier to control.
Okay, so we're easier
Could
to
be
control.
the reason for the risk. Could be the reason why we are so afraid to change. Because we know so little and we can't find out more.
Okay, so are the governments of the world, are they trying to hide things from us?
Well, they have confirmed they do. So it's no longer a question.
Okay, so the governments are hiding things from us. How do we feel about that? Does that make you feel empowered, disempowered, angry, happy? Is it a good idea? We have a new person, Milda. Hello. Well, come and join us. We've been talking about risk. We've been talking about whether governments shouldn't hide things from us. Katie's been saying that we've had a lot of research about UFOs has been hidden from us for quite a long time. So how does that make people feel?
Also,
I've got.
can people hear the X-Files sound effect? Because I really like it, but I don't know if it's anyone else that you should.
Can people hear that?
Some people just don't find it funny. That's fair enough. Okay.
It's
Apparently, that's been based a lot on true stories. Apparently.
Well, there you go. I think Margot and then Mikey.
I think with these UFOs, I'm just going to hark back to another Adam Curtis documentary. Wasn't that like a big hoax anyway? The UFOs. That was the way the governments were trying to detract people's attention from everything they've been doing. I think they were doing some kind of cover-ups. I can't remember, but like basically there was like a bit of a fascination with UFOs. I certainly remember growing up in Poland. Like X-Files was such a massive thing. That was like, you know, thing that we always watched with my sister. And there was a lot of this kind of like literature of conspiracy theory and that kind of stuff. But I would just like to say on the point of science, there's this really fabulous scientist. She's German. I'm going to look up her name because I just can't remember. She makes these short videos where she explains stuff about science. And I think she's really good. She recently did one about what science says is not, you know, the science is not taking sides, basically. Anyway, I'll dig it up.
A little bit of a plug for Margot over there. Mikey.
Well, I mean, I think from my perspective, I think the thing that we find hard to embrace as human beings is uncertainty. And everything's uncertain. Are there aliens out there or not? Is the government lying to us or not?
Oh, that one's certain already. Just UK BBC is not reporting, and government has issued an order to hide the biggest evidence that UK has for another 50 years until 2079 or something like that. It's ridiculous. It was supposed to come out already because they have pictures of like 100-meter big UFOs over UK.
But my point here is that as human beings, we find uncertainty. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We don't know. That idea is too hard to take. It's either got to be yes or no. And
then why are we kept in fear if that's the case? Because government could very easily just come straight forward about it. I mean, everyone pretty much knew about it after Roswell, but they decided to hide about it. And all the governments, for some reason, this is the most intriguing part for me. How do you make all the scientists and governments agree on something? How is that possible? Because it looks impossible today.
Well, my question would be, do people think that if you are hiding information as a government, or at least keeping it secret, what does that do? Does that actually keep you fearful? Does that actually make you feel happier maybe? Or, you know, does anyone think it's a good idea? I feel like I
think it depends on the reason. Like, as much as my emotions say definitely a bad idea, but my rational mind can think of a few reasons in which case it would make a lot of sense, and I would agree with that. For example, now scientists say time travel is possible. Some students have figured out how to solve all the paradoxes in math. And if that's the case, then yeah, time travel, if you want to make some changes with time, wouldn't work if people know about it. So you would have to keep it a secret. So there are many possibilities where it is a good idea, but this is the whole point where we don't know. We are left in kind of a status quo where we are even denied it exists, or made, laughing stock kind of. Where it's actually true. And I'm more concerned about the people who have actually experienced it themselves, and they were told that they're stupid.
Almost,
how do you continue on with your life after that? How do you feel safe in a world which does that? And you can't say any single government because everyone did that.
Okay, so it's almost like you have world governments gaslighting the individuals that were involved in either the science or the research. I mean, again, do people agree with this? Katie's probably maybe taken quite like a hard line that governments have made a mistake in this situation. Do we want to move on to something else about risk, about UFOs, about the Russian government we've talked about today, other governments around the world? Where are we going to take this, guys? This is Talkaoke. It's a pop-up talk show. And we've got a new face around the table. We've got Milda online, and we have also over here John as well. John, who's just joined us in the studio. So what do we think, guys? Talking about risk. Mikey. Oh, sorry. Who was that? Was that David?
Yeah.
Yes, David, go.
Yeah. Can I say something about the Russian, how do you say that, against the guy who is against Putin getting like a treatment of military grade poison?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty scary because basically, and finally, just like the European Union just put some sanctions of some Russian guys, 6 people, very close people to Putin. They froze their asset and they had some sanctions. But basically, it's pretty scary that basically a government can basically decide to basically just eliminate their opponent by just killing them with nuclear military grade poison. And basically, this is not fiction. This is reality.
Katie,
how do people live with those risks where, you know, the government, which is supposed to be of the people, is kind of, how do you go against it? How do you solve it? Like even now in UK government, they're halfway through passing a law which allows the covered operators, like special agents, to do pretty much anything without any repercussions. So how do we go about that?
Yeah, how do we feel about that, Mikey?
I mean, to be honest, I know it sounds weird, but I think this is actually the normal situation that governments have the ability to assassinate their enemies. And the American government, right through the Obama era, has been doing exactly that. It's been, don't worry about that. It's been actually doing targeted assassinations against what it considers the enemy of that government, and that's pretty normal. And when Russia does it, it's a little bit of a different story. So I think it's quite normal, and I think actually, slowly but slowly, the governments are coming into line rather than actually becoming more rogue. I think they're actually slowly being challenged about, you know, is it right to go to a different country and take out your enemy? But yeah, I think it's normal, and I think we've just suddenly woken up to the fact this is what governments do.
Again, so we've got, Nike thinks that maybe this is quite a normal thing. Maybe we shouldn't be so angry about governments, or maybe we should be angry about that, but that's just the state of the world. Well, where are we going to go from here, guys?
Well, my question would be,
Gillian,
like, if everyone's doing it, do we just accept it that it's normal? Like, is our criteria for what's normal some moral grounds, or is our criteria how many people do it? Because if that's the case, then we are, in my opinion, in a pretty dangerous place. Because if everyone starts, you know, looting around and living in anarchy, it becomes new normal, right? Not sure how many people would really love to live in such a world. But again, like, we live with risks every day, coming back to the main topic of the talk. And all of these things are just risks we have been living for generations. And the only thing that's changing is we are becoming aware of them. And as far as I know, like how risks are managed in real life in various projects and so on, it comes down to understanding them and lowering their probabilities, in essence. So when we have chances to influence it, like, for example, various laws being passed and so on, the thing that concerns me is that a lot of times people tend to ignore it. It's like, it doesn't affect me directly, so why would I care? And maybe that is one of the biggest risks. Maybe some risks we are just not aware of. We don't understand them because we don't think about them. but I think apathy in kind of changing world where we can guide where it goes, it's like, you know, we've been like children that have been complaining for so long that we don't like the way the world runs, but now when it's changing and we can do something about it, we're like, well, who cares? So
Yeah, no, that's brilliant.
do we have the risk? Do we want to do something about them? And do we have the will, and are we ready to spend our energy, time, and you know, everything to do something?
Yeah, so you had sort of kind of two good points there. One talking about thinking about government risks that they may be subject onto people and whether we should be worried about that, and also the idea of risks and unknown risks versus known risks, and actually maybe that's how you can manage it. Gillian, you had your hand up earlier. Have you got something that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Mikey. I think that these things have been happening. If you look at history, they've always been happening. I think that I mean, I thought what was quite interesting about the Russian assassinations is how badly done they were, about this attempt to, you know, poison people and getting completely caught doing it so badly, and maybe that it was deliberate to show like, well, we can do that, but actually they just looked incompetent, because we know that governments have been doing these kinds of things since the beginning of time. Now, I think obviously that kind of behavior, assassinating opponents, and that is the thing that, when, you know, it's an admission of failure when you really can't do it any other way than you use violence. Actually, usually the exercise of power is done in a much cleverer way. But I think the idea that we're suddenly shocked by this is probably got to do with our ignorance of history as a culture. So I think that the more ignorant we are, the more we feel, you know, shocked and then don't know what to do about things. And there's a purpose in keeping people, you know, fixed on Kardashians and all kinds of other idiocies, rather than a really clear idea of what has been done in the past and what may be doable in the present and what may be possible in the future. And when you see it like that, I think the notion of risk actually just becomes one of the factors rather than the only factor.
So maybe knowledge would set you free. Maybe one of the Kardashians should retrain in cyber. Who knows? Maybe they're distracting us all a bit too much now. So there's some good points there as well about maybe we need to have a bit more knowledge.
Well, I just want to come in. I think Gillian's referring to the Sergei Skripal attempted assassination, and to me it is also again this idea of this kind of, you know, this kind of almost circus, and I do think it's almost like it's a display of power or a display of kind of confusion. Do things in this very bizarre way.
Yeah, and yeah, to pick up on that, what you were talking about before. I mean, I also read more about this this guy in Russia who was this sort of, you know, contemporary artist who started working for the government. I mean, I think you're right. There's this sort of theatrical aspect to it, which is really interesting. But funnily enough, I don't really see it as sinisterly as Adam Curtis does. I see it as just a manifestation of contemporary life, because you also, you know, Russia uses the tricks of you know, contemporary, you know, avant-garde art, and, you know, America uses the tricks of contemporary Hollywood. I mean, it's about trickery, and you can only be tricked if you let yourself be tricked, I think. I mean, if you see things for what they are, or at least make the effort to see things for what they are, you know, it becomes a bit less scary.
You mentioned, so you mentioned,
challenge it.
You mentioned, I was just interested, you mentioned avant-garde Russian artists, you mentioned about Hollywood. Do people think that artists are maybe complicit in, you know, spreading messages or clouding messages?
Of course.
Mikey?
Yes.
We've all done, it's always been like that. I'm an art historian. If there's anybody been complicit in presenting the state at its most glorious, it's artists. And I'm not condemning artists for that. That's actually one of the functions of art.
One of the functions of art. Do we agree? One of the functions of art is to support the state. We've got some people in the studio. We've got some people online as well. Mikey?
Absolutely, totally agree with Gillian there. I mean, I would then want to bring in, I don't want to get too kind of theoretical, that is, but I am anyway. But there's a kind of theatre maker called Augusto Boal from Brazil.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was very critical of theatre because he felt that theatre was just a way to make people think. And I see it all the time. You go to the National Theatre. We've done several residencies in the National Theatre. People go there, they see a play about the environment, they feel like they've done something about the environment because they've seen the play, and then they're on the right side. But actually, what Boal was saying is that play about the environment or that play about the patriarchy, it could be about anything, is actually just helping us feel like we are engaged and we've done something about this terrible state of the world. But actually, it's the opposite. We're kind of almost, we're kind of salved by actually taking part as an audience. We've not done anything about it at all.
Yeah.
John in the studio.
I'd query that. Surely the purpose of art is to question. And you can only question if you can bring people to the ideas. So rather than, some people are complicit, but think about Howard Brent and the angry young men in the 50s. They were saying so as they were to show people that there could be a change. There should be a change. I don't believe that's complicity. I do believe it's asking the question.
So that's brilliant. So we've got John thinking that it's actually, you still need that group of people, those people to question the system, to ask those questions. Mikey thinks that, maybe partly agrees that actually if you go and see a film, maybe you watch the new David Attenborough documentary about climate change, maybe you actually forget to do a bit of recycling because you've already watched that Netflix show, you've done your bit. Do people agree? Is it useless to engage with any art that's talking about the issues of the world? Katie?
No.
And then Gillian. Katie first.
Sorry.
So I think art, just like many things in life, is a tool. Which way you use it is what defines whether it's right or wrong. Again, it comes back to the moral grounds. Because
clap some John there.
In many cases, for example, comedians from ages ago, even in old royal courts, where like the jokers, were the people who could speak the truth pretty much without much repercussions in many cases. Not all, but more than the regular people. So certain artists have actually more freedom in raising questions and so on. But at the same time, artists can be used as a distraction to distract the general public. So I think it's mainly a question of what is the context, what is the purpose. Just like, and I don't think it's very often just a single-sided thing. Just like with this advertisement, like yes, it may be a bad taste from the government, but it can be a great, an extremely effective way to start a conversation. So it depends, I guess.
It's a tool. So art is a tool. It can be, you have to think about the context. Gillian, you also had a point when we were talking about this.
Well, I completely agree with Katie. And I think, every individual actually has that potential to make a moral choice. So you can make an artwork, like, okay, right now I'm working on some projects which ultimately I suppose are supporting the state because they're sort of, taking money from the state and doing some kind of youth work. And ultimately the point is to kind of make people feel like they have some kind of stake in the status quo in the society that we're in right now. You could certainly argue that I'm using my artistic skills and knowledge in really kind of keeping people from, going and burning down the House of Parliament, whatever. So, but I mean, I have to make a moral decision, and my moral decision is that actually at this moment, I think it's quite a good thing to do. But there's other choices that I could make to, with work that I might do, where I'd say no. And I've made these kind of choices before. I say, I'm not going to do this project for, I don't know, British Petroleum or whatever. So if we have artistic skills and know-how on that, we can make choices. No, and I'm not talking about temptations. You know, I'm tempted to go and do something that gives me tons of money. No. It's about the ethical choice. We're not perfect. Sometimes we make unethical choices, but as Katie said, it is actually about choice. And art is just a tool. It's a set of abilities and outlooks and that, and we make up our decisions daily, really.
Okay, very nice. So you sort of it's a constant like point of time where you have to make decisions. It's a tool. Art is a tool. We've got Mikey behind us. I don't know whether we can bring in anyone else who hasn't spoken yet. So we've got We Are All Bats, the mysterious We Are All Bats. We've got Milda. I don't know if any of you guys want to chip in any of your thoughts. Maybe Milda, if you want to give us your thoughts about what we've been going on so far. No, Milda might possibly be in the toilet, might be away. We're going to go to Mikey instead.
I mean, for me, you know, just the very concept of money itself, and money is a more than anything else, is just a kind of, you know, quantization of power or of labour force, if you're going to be Marxist about it. And inevitably, energy, yeah, is another way of putting it. Inevitably, all the rich guys, and they're mostly guys, are going to be the ones with the money. And if you're an artist, basically you're going to be the ones looking for rich guys with money to do work for.
Yeah.
So inevitably you're going to end up working for the bad dudes. And certainly, as the people speak, we've worked for a lot of bad people.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, good news is that monetary system and economy of the world is going to change very much very soon. So it will be better in that regard. But I don't think that having a lot of money essentially makes someone bad. I think it's, again, another tool. Which way someone uses it, you know, some people make solar power. So like today, I found that according to some statisticians, the solar power at the moment is the cheapest form of power anywhere. So we have gone to a place where renewable energy has become the cheapest form of energy, and someone did it with a lot of money. So just another tool. And I think the bigger problem is that many people don't realize their potential, and we only think from one point of view. Let's say money. You know, I am not rich, I can't do much. Well, Greta Thunberg isn't much rich, but she's done a lot. So I mean, we're not in the same circumstances, everyone, but I think again, the direction in which we think, where instead of looking which conditions don't allow us to achieve something, we would start looking what are the advantages of our situation, could very much change our perception of our own power in various regards.
Okay, so we're thinking, I think there's some good points there. So yeah, well, how do we change that power? Money is just another form of power. We can just use it for what we want. Again, everything that's got tools. I think I've got David who's waving at me. David, again, you'll need to unmute yourself. There we go.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can.
It's not too much money, it's skills. Skills is meant to be rewarded with money. So basically, if you got the skills, you can basically get paid for your skills. And the thing is changing with the bitcoins, all the Bitcoin things, where basically Bitcoin do not have any materials equivalent. It's just theory. So, but anyway, and the artist, for the artist things, from what does the government, is just the government, any government, I will take the Nazi during the war, they will use comics or people who are doing comics, like drawing comics, to basically depict the Jewish in a very, very bad way. And basically that was the job of the artist, and they were getting paid for it. That's it wasn't too much the artists, it was the people who was paying them and telling them what they wanted to achieve, who was like basically the trouble. That's it. That was my little bit for the artists.
And do people think that they are the artists are entirely not to blame? John, in the studio.
Well, no, I was just thinking, we've been talking about government, but it seems to me we forget there are people that manipulate and do exactly that, called advertisers. And they create great risks because they sell you a dream without showing you the other side. But it's not only government, big business and advertisers. I can't think of the name of it. There's a whole book about how people decide what elements and what people wanted. And you see the billboard and you take it. How many of the skincare products actually work and have been proved to work by somebody who isn't paid by the company that makes them?
Okay, so yeah, John's bringing in maybe like a big sector we haven't talked about. We've talked about governments. We've gone all the way maybe to the bottom of the scale of smaller artists. We haven't really talked about big business and where they're, how they're involved in this story.
I wonder if there's anyone on this chat that's got any expertise in advertising.
Oh, is there anyone in this chat who has an expertise in advertising?
I have worked in a marketing company for a year. Not sure if that counts as expertise, but I've been at least on the boat.
And do you agree with John in the studio?
Absolutely. We had a guy who was doing, those video advertisements for food companies like McDonald's and so on. And most of the time, what you see in the advertisement isn't even food. For example, car oil is very popular substitute for honey on the advertisements most of the times. Then soap foam is used to make beer foamy and so on. Like, he was telling us all the secrets. It's pretty much, there is hardly any food on the advertisement video. It's just made to look very, presentable, so to say. And that's the thing. It's one of the things we spoke about the governments, where everyone knows they're doing this. It's just, we kind of accept it. And this is the same thing with advertisements. Many people know it's not true, but everyone still goes for it anyway. Is there something wrong with the system, or is it something wrong with us?
So you think, actually, I like it. So is it, I'm just going to go with Katie's comment there. Is it something wrong with the system, or is it wrong with us? Who agrees, disagrees with that concept? What Gillian maybe is thinking something. Mikey, behind me, first of all.
Well, I believe that, let's say, the godfather of advertising was actually the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Once again, according to Adam Curtis, that's where I get all my information from. And it is tapping into a psychological, our psychological construction. And I think this ties in as well with our inability. There's lots of, the way we see the world is not in a clear, objective way. We see it in a way that is evolved for survival in a primeval environment. And so we've got lots of psychological flaws, and advertisers have become adept at exploiting those psychological flaws.
Do you feel like you have psychological flaws? So, David, are you being manipulated by big advertisers?
I guess so. I love my chocolate. I don't know why, but when I see an advertisement for chocolate, I do run for it. You don't have to be the brand who is advertised, but I will run for something nice and sweet. So basically, now to go back to the big commercial things. I don't know if you noticed it recently, but basically there is some major company who are turning into like meat-free ingredients, or like all plant-based ingredients, and they are like major players in the food industry. And basically, it started from like a wheel, so it started at a very small scales. But basically, the scales is now so big that it's been taken over. Veganism, for instance, basically the English favorite food now, basically it's been taken over by the big players because there is a demand. And basically it started as a very small group of people who would basically just say, no, no, don't hurt animals and don't hurt the environment. And basically now is the majority of consumer. So basically somehow the big players are taking up those credentials kind of stuff. This segment, what they call segment market, but segment market with growth, with possible growth. So yeah, somehow it's the consumer who is choosing and it's the consumer who is changing the world.
Okay, so maybe there's a story of hope within that. I think we've got Katie. Do you think it's a symbol of hope? Do you think it's a symptom of something else?
I think it's a very good answer to my question. Is the problem with the system or is the problem with us? This, I think, is a very strong point towards the problem with us. Because we are the market. If we change, if we start questioning these things, then the system will be forced to change, just as it's happening in the food industry and energy industry and car industry at the moment, and many others as well. So maybe now is the time when a lot of this information is coming out, and we just need to get smarter, so to say, start questioning, start researching, start listening, start understanding it, instead of just believing in something that's comfortable for us.
Very nice, thank you. I actually have also noticed we've got some new people to the chat as well. So we've got, I would say Eva. If you want to come and pop on audio, pop on video, you can come and introduce yourself to Talkaoke. We're a pop-up talk show talking about risk. Hello.
Yeah, hi, I'm Eva. I'm just looking after the kids, so I'll be in and out. Yeah,
that's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Have you? Are you able to speak now, or are you about to run off to in the service of others?
I can speak now. Yeah.
What are your opinions on? We've been talking about risks today. We've been talking about the power of consumer versus the power of the advertiser. Who do you think wins in that battle?
That's a good question. Power of consumer. I think we are definitely controlled by technocrats at the moment, for sure, and big corporations. So I'm not sure how much we are the ones who are guiding it. Yeah, I think we are very much driven by stuff being pushed on us and through fear economics and so on.
I've got some agreements. Was that some agreements from? I've got a point here from Margot behind me, or yes, I'm going to go to Margot first and then Mikey.
Yeah, I think it's a really uneven battle between the advertisers and like your general public, like your individual human beings, because I think we're just, it's not our job. Like if our job was full time to, fight fake news and to see through the manipulation that's served to us by advertisers and governments and whatever, then if that was our full-time occupation, we wouldn't have time to like live, earn money, look after children, pursue careers, look after our health, our family relations and stuff. That's a really big job. So I think advertisers and those who have got, whose job that is to manipulate people or push out a certain type of agenda, maybe sometimes, it can be a positive thing as well, for instance, about, global warming and the environment. But I don't think it's an even fight. We are just humans trying to like live our lives and just like be, metaphysical experience if we can. Just it's working sometimes, so we can't have that even. So yeah, it's very hard to weed yourself out of it. So I think we're lost causes as individuals.
We are the tiny person against the dragon of advertisers. Mikey, do you agree?
Well, in one sense, it's not an even fight at all because we don't have the structures, we don't have the time. But what we do have, as Jarvis Cocker says, is numbers. Where there's so many more people just getting on with their lives than there are.
Little headbang from Katie there.
Yeah, than there are, these people in power. And we've got, and that actually. Talking about fear, and I think it was good that Eva brought this question of fear, the first person to mention it, into the equation, because those people fear the sheer numbers and sheer mass of people that's out there.
So with advertisers fear that mass, that sheer numbers, are we going to take a risk and rise up against advertisers? Are we going to go back to maybe talking about risks a bit more generally? That's a theme for our talkie-okie. Take a risk, maybe put your camera on if you fancy. We've got, what else have we got going on? We've got a bit of a hello from... oh, there we go. We've got a hello from Milda, who's a listener for today. But welcome. You're very welcome to the Talkie-Okie Challenge. If you want to just throw some topics of conversation into the chat just to catch us off guard, maybe take a risk and freak us out by throwing something new into the chat, please feel free to as well. Any thoughts here from John or John? Two Johns in the studio.
Yeah, it strikes me, do we know what risk is? Because I've been thinking today, we're going into lockdown tonight. When we were in the last lockdown, I was shielded. And I knew what I was doing. Risks were at a minimum. But with this sort of half-assed situation we've got where everybody seems to be saying something different, I don't actually know what the risks are and how I can avoid them.
I think that's quite a good one that John's brought to the table, actually, talking about risks in terms of what we're going through at the moment. I don't know if everyone here is in London, maybe they're a bit further across the field, but yeah, how have you found in this period of coronavirus, have you found the risks, maybe how as we had them at the start as opposed to now? I've got quite a few hands up, so that's a good topic to switch on to. I'm going to go for Mikey first and then maybe Margot next.
I think the thing we're most uncomfortable with is uncertainty, and in reality we don't really know. The government doesn't know what they're doing with this. We don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows, and that is very unnerving for people, very anxiety creating, and I think that's the big issue here that we're not talking about.
Yeah, again, Katie and then Margot. Katie, go.
The thing which is very intriguing for me, considering this virus, is that there are online databases, maybe not extremely convenient to use, but there are,
Katie,
where...
Can I interrupt you very quickly, just because we've had a note from Gillian, who's having to run off. So before she leaves, can we get your final thought, please? And then we'll go back to you. Thank you very much, Katie.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having my last legal night out, so I'm going to shoot off and have it. Then I'm going to be breaking the law, obviously, after that. My last feeling is that I agree with Mikey that the biggest problem is we are feeling risk is okay if you feel like there's a certain level of stability that you have in your life, you're willing to take a risk. But when you feel that everything is unstable and slipping out from under your feet, then about half the population thinks, oh my God, I don't want to take any more risks. The other half think, well, they've got nothing to lose. So I think we're actually at that brink now, and it's created a lot of I suppose division and insecurity. So that's kind of my feeling now. What we do with it, I don't really know. I think we're all kind of groping around.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you very much for that final thought, Gillian. We'll leave you on that, and thank you for giving us such a big open topic to end on as well.
Have fun on your night out as well, your last night out.
Last legal night out. And also big thank you to Katie for being interrupted and so graciously accepting. So Katie, if you could go back to your thought, please, and maybe give us a little reminder of what you had before as well.
Thank you. Oh, I can be interrupted anytime. Totally cool with that. I was talking about how when coronavirus started, there was a lot of uncertainty, as many people say. But I was in the same boat. I worked before in the hospitality industry. I was a manager in a club. So I had my own concerns, but I'm a techie enough person that I immediately went online. I looked for public databases where laboratories globally from all around the world, they submit their data, and there is barely any comment on it. It's just if you understand it, you can figure out what it means. And by the end of January, there was already data on the database which said that the virus was spreading around the world in Europe and US by November, not later. Yes, that information was there at the end of January or beginning of February. That information reached public media maybe months later, months. So a lot of information exists. It's easily accessible to anyone willing to look for it. The problem is that we are so used to listen only to what we are being told that even when we are proved that we are being told lies, we still don't try to learn to find either different people to listen to or to figure out the information ourselves. We still just ask, okay, so please tell us the truth. So what's happening? But they've been lying for months, so why are we asking them anyway? Where we can just go and figure it out for ourselves. Like this is one thing which I'm struggling to understand, because there have been a lot of people online. There have been, especially now with the lockdown, there have been a lot of people around the world from various countries which make channels on YouTube. They start talking about these things. Like the most accurate news are not coming from the mainstream media anymore, and pretty much everyone knows that, but very few are willing to search and find the right channels for themselves. Why is that?
Yeah, no, brilliant. I would like. There's a lot, again, a lot to unpack there. Do people agree with that? Do you think that mainstream media is an unreliable channel? Do you find it easy to find what you feel comfortable with saying is concrete news? I'm going to go to Mikey behind me.
Well, I think the media is a reflection of us, and we are really uncomfortable, as I said, with uncertainty. And the issue here is we don't know what we're doing. So in that situation, we should be seeking to get a diversity of views, so we've got the maximum different viewpoints to understand what's going on. But instead, what seems to be happening is the exact opposite, is that there's an orthodoxy about how to deal with this situation that we're not even allowed to challenge. I mean, a friend of mine is a comedian who did some online stand-up and some live stand-up about challenging the use of wearing masks, for example, and she got dropped by her agents, Avalon, the top comedy agents, because she was challenging this. And, you know, likewise, other dissenting I read an article in the New Scientist, which was kind of rubbishing this letter, which was written by some dissenting voices in science, saying, is a lockdown a good idea? Are we actually losing more than we're gaining with this in terms of mental health, in terms of other health detriments? And the article in the New Scientist was just rubbishing this letter, not really taking up the arguments, but just saying the majority of scientists disagree with this, so therefore it must be wrong. And to me, that's not a proper debate. And instead of opening up the debate, we seem to be closing down the debate at a crucial time, and that's what worries me more than anything else.
Margot, you had a response to whilst Margot was speaking? Mikey was speaking.
Someone was speaking, that's true. No, I think it's a very good point about, you know, I mean, do we, I mean, I think I'm just like still processing what you said about this community being dropped by their, you know, by the agents. I think that's really interesting, and I think it kind of goes to show how much, you know, we can consider ourselves open-minded and thinking for ourselves. So actually, there are some agendas that's more favourable for us to play by. And I think also one of the good examples is the whole Julian Assange, you know, trial and that kind of situation unfolding from the time when The Guardian was just saying, yeah, you know, he's such a great whistleblower, let's talk about it, to writing even a book about him, to now just gradually, time over time, it got to a point they're not even covering the trial anymore. That agenda has been dropped, is just really, really marginalising, and this is because it's just not in their favour to do that now, even though what he stands for is, you know, some would say that, you know, the whole core of being a journalist, but if The Guardian is like bowing down to, you know, to other powers, and they're kind of saying, well, actually it's not such a big deal, we'll just, it's not really important what he did. We're just going to like really play it down and not cover it. And that's a fundamental issue. You can't trust the media, I don't think. Not really.
So can you trust the media? I think we've got John in the studio wants to respond to that as well.
To take up Mikey's point a bit and say what you said actually is quite concerning, because as I understand art, the very function it has is to question the situation, to make people think about it. That sort of action should be protected, not discarded. Art is to give you the shock, well, it used to be called the shock of the new. I don't know what the present is. But if you lose that, you're actually losing the ability to develop free speech.
Okay, so we've got, if you, I think also maybe that was echoed slightly by Katie as well. So we've got a discussion and maybe talking about free speech, about cancel culture, about whether you get dropped by your agent if you don't think wearing a mask is a good idea. We've got some new people as well in the chat, and I'd be interested to think that we've got Otons, and I don't know what, I've just got your name as Black so far. I don't know whether you've got an actual name as well, but Otons, or maybe Mysterious Mr. Black or Mrs. Black, if any of you want to chime in on one of your thoughts. Hello, the Mysterious Mrs. Blacks.
Can't see.
What did
Hello.
you say?
Hello.
What did you say? Thank you.
Sorry, we just like logged on, so maybe we just take a second.
No, welcome.
Catch up with the conversation.
We've been talking about risk. We've been talking about cancel culture. We've been talking about maybe if you're someone who disagrees with some of the coronavirus regulations, is that taking a risk? Are you maybe risking yourself, or is it a risk to maybe put some thoughts out there that are contrary to the government's opinions? What do we think? We've got so many new members, but maybe they don't all want to engage.
Yeah, sorry, we have we're having a last party before the lockdown again. So we just try and combine.
Where is it though?
So what's your name?
Mummy pterodactyl actually.
Miss Black.
Miss Black. Okay, we're gonna sit with Miss Black. I like it.
Yeah, let's leave it like that.
We were
Sorry,
at this uncertain time, it seems to be that instead of opening up debate, we seem to be closing down debate and stifling those dissenting voices. And I guess that's the question really, why is that happening? It seems to be, the argument for it is about being responsible or being safe, but is it safe and responsible to stifle those unorthodox voices?
Is it?
Oh, I'm muted. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, well, it's, the voices are down there, but it's like, they're on social networks, they get closed down, nobody wants to hear. It's like easier to say that you all do conspiracy and just follow mainstream media. Where do we start? The voices are there, they just get muted.
Does everyone agree? Is there anyone who maybe thinks that actually those voices should be muted? Maybe we've got our Tons, who is muted right now, but she might not be in a moment. Or maybe she's also gone to the toilet. It's very important to do so. Where are we going to take this, guys? We've been talking about cancel culture. We've been talking about muted. We've been talking about our second lockdown. There are lots of opinions in the studio.
The other John wants to say something, not said much so far.
Other John in the studio. And then I'm going to go for other John in the studio. I'm sorry that you are the other one. And then Katie next, I think.
Well, I haven't said anything because there was a reference to the world of advertising, and I spent 20 years in that world, much better off then than I am now. But a great deal comes to my mind, and I don't want to speak for very long, but I think while there is a school of thought that we would all be better off if we understood and acted according to our understanding of risk, actually the way that it's managed, the reverse is true. Because we are given the impression that if we do something, there is a great deal of risk to ourselves. And in actual fact, what we haven't managed to do is to understand risk to society. This is the problem. I think I know what to do to minimize risk to myself in an environment of COVID-19. Not too close, not too many hugs and kisses, not too many huffs and puffs in front of other people whom I don't know. But actually, this idea of the R number, that if it is actually greater than 1, whatever I do isn't about me, it's about society. And I don't understand that.
Okay, so John's saying that it's about not understanding the risks and about you can protect yourself to a situation, but when we get larger than that, that's where it gets confusing, it's uncertain. I think, Mike, you're talking about uncertainty and risk at the moment. When we're uncertain with risk, we're maybe unwilling to engage with it. When we have the knowledge, we're maybe more engaged to take risks. Katie?
I really like John's point. I think we have gone so far in kind of praising the individuality and individual opinions that we totally forgot to instill in people and develop sense of community and how we affect each other in a bigger way. I think this highlights it in a very direct way, because very often people would think only how things affect them, not how they affect others, how they affect the world. I've had a few conversations with my friends recently and about the same topic, actually, because they would be complaining how world is unfair and so on, but they don't pay much attention what they do to it. It's kind of, everyone sees the world as a one-way street. What do I get from it? But so few people think like, okay, what do I give? What is my contribution? And in such situation as now, well, for me, my contribution is staying at home most of the time, like independently of the lockdown rules. I'm lucky enough to still be on furlough and be able to manage from it. And I just try to be enclosed, try to move around as little as possible, mostly walking, just so that other people who need to move can do so with lower risk. At the same time, I reduce my risk and others to it as well. And I think it's a fine thing to do, but very few people agree. Like a lot of my friends, since I used to work in a club, they like to party, they like to socialize, and they see only the other side of the coin. Like, when will I enjoy my life? Why do I have to live like this when I'm not at the risk? I'm so young. Why I can't just go and party where, you know, I'm fine to accept the risk? So we come to this point where a lot of people end up acting like a small child, where, you know, it's only only I, me, and myself. But it's time, you know, it happens on many levels, on individual level, on national level. Oh, this is my country, I only care about this, and who gives a damn about the rest of the world? But we need to grow up, we need to mature, where we see the whole humanity as a unit, because we are going in a certain direction together.
So it's really understanding that tension between understanding who you are as an individual, your relationship with society, and actually what your society wants to look like as well. Margot?
I would like to slightly disagree with Katie maybe a little bit about people going and clubbing and partying and kind of like, why are they thinking about themselves? Why they're not thinking about wider society? And I recently had a situation at work where I felt like I was thinking about everything all the time, like the humanity, the purpose of life, the sense in my work. But I forgot to enjoy it. Thank you. I forgot to enjoy myself. And then I realized or remembered that if I'm not okay, then none of that big stuff is going to be okay either. I will not have anything to give. So maybe the most radical thing to do is to be paradoxically selfish and look after your own mental health by doing things that bring you pleasure, and that will create a positive society.
Brilliant. I've actually got Eva who on the virtual studio, and then I'll go into the Mikey behind me. But Eva, you wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to open up conversation about how to empower people with knowledge what constitutes good health. You know, how can we actually become less fearful of bugs and viruses and other pathogens that are around? How do we support our immune system? You know, no mainstream media has been talking about it, or governments, in fact. And I think that's really disempowering, that all we're doing is fearing each other, fearing pathogens, sitting at home. We're avoiding sunlight. I mean, there's no longer much sunlight now, but whole summer we were sitting at home, avoiding vitamin D3, which is one of the main things that improves our immune system and our defense system, you know. And vitamin C has been classified on YouTube as a quack science, you know, and people being censored. Doctors have been censored by advising people to take vitamin C to protect themselves. So I think it's a really important conversation. How do we educate the masses, the people, you know, to take care of their bodies rather than be in fear, which is also another thing that I think does not help to have happy life and immune system.
So we've been talking about maybe mental health from Margaret, then we've got well-being maybe as a bit of a wider topic from Eva. Mikey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the R number was mentioned, but it's just a number. And I think, you know, the last couple of comments kind of hint at this problem, and it's a huge problem. It's a problem before the pandemic started, of anxiety and of mental health in general. The bigger epidemic, the pandemic actually that we have in the world is a pandemic of anxiety.
Yes.
And the pandemic of COVID has only served to amplify the pandemic of anxiety, which we're not doing anything about. How many people have committed suicide?
Yes.
What are the numbers? What are the numbers of young people that have committed suicide? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, you know, where I do support the science and I do agree with infection control, I think we need to take it in a more holistic way, and we need to, you know, and partying in a way is also a way of dealing with mental health issues, because you're partying and you're having fun and you're spreading that fun to other people.
And oxytocin is a very important part of that, you know, of us being actually, we are, you know, we live our lives healthy based on connections. We are connecting animals like the rest of us. And also, I was watching this old person in old people's home where someone visited his mother over lockdown, and she was behind a closed glass crying, and she had dementia, so she couldn't understand what was going on, but she was not allowed to hug her son, you know. And these people are left to die by themselves at the pretense of protecting the elderly. Well, there comes, you know, there are many questions to be answered. Actually, what constitutes love and protection?
John, other John in the studio.
Just wanted to pick up a point that Mikey made about the state of anxiety prior to this pandemic. One of the reasons, principal reason, that I left the world of advertising was because by then I realized that the function of the advertiser was to make people unhappy. If people are unhappy, you can sell them something. If they're happy, it's much more difficult, because why do they need something extra? And since that time, we have seen an explosion in the world of wants. We now have cathedrals of debt all around London, all around the country. We have whole parks, I went to one yesterday, vast empires of businesses trying very hard to get us to spend what we don't have in order to put right that state of anxiety that all those successors of mine succeeded in raising with us. So to understand that is to understand something rather unpleasant, which is that if you take away the world of advertising with its function to make us all anxious and unhappy, then of course businesses collapse and jobs will disappear, which at this time the pandemic is quietly doing for us. I think there's a paradox. Even I didn't spot it. In fact, I was caught by it. I thought months ago that's going to do a great deal of harm to the housing market. Actually, it turns out that demand for housing has skyrocketed, and housing is now way up on what it was this time last year. So in fact, that buying your way out of anxiety to cover the risk that you are now having to face is working very well.
Okay, so that's an excellent point. Thank you very much, John. So thinking about, how anxiety, buying, advertising, want is all linked, and maybe it was a problem even before the pandemic started. Where does anyone have any response to that? Where, you know, we've got Hortense has joined us. We've got the Ms. Black on the line as well. Where do you want to go with this, guys? Where do people agree? Maybe people disagree. I've got Mikey in the corner. I
just want to sum up what John said in a simpler way and just say anxiety is good for business. That's it.
But who is making the money? Is anyone making money from anxiety being good for business? Has anyone profited from it, maybe? Do they feel?
Netflix.
Netflix. Ah, that's quite a good point. Yes, yes.
They definitely profited from all people being anxious and so on. It's a great distraction. And what do you do during the lockdown?
So did Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon as well. Yes, yeah. And do we feel like that's something that we want to fight against? Is that something we accept, or are they actually quite good and comforting? Does anyone think actually I do need to buy a new pair of shoes just to get me through lockdown?
I just want
Ms. Black.
Yes, sorry. I work in a clinic as well, and the anxiety you just talked about anxiety. It's it's every patient we come is anxiety, and every like I can't say percentage wise, but it's so many of them on antidepressants. It's the first thing doctor handles you out over the post. So there is a serious also issue on that case.
Okay, yeah. So so you've actually had first-hand experience from this as well. We've got a waiver in the background. Has your person in the background got any thoughts?
Yes.
Are you feeling anxious in the back there?
Hello. What do you think about What do you think about going to second lockdown? What do you think about your day so far today? Have you got any thoughts you want to share to the world, to the virtual world of Talkaoke?
My birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday!
I'm celebrating one day before my birthday, so maybe tomorrow is my birthday.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Party got cancelled.
How are you celebrating?
Very depressing issues, for children's birthdays that are not allowed anymore. Here we go.
Yeah, what can you guys do for birthdays now? What are you going to do to celebrate?
Well, we're celebrating day before the lockdown.
Part 2. There's only 5 people here.
Only 5 people. Here you go. Safe.
Excellent. So okay, so we've had some people you've having to reduce your birthday parties, and that's something that maybe almost everyone by now has experienced during lockdown. It was about to the next few months as well. So does that impact your well-being? Do you think it's a sacrifice that you're willing to make? We've got the Blacks on the phone. We've got the Katie Foster. We've got Eva. We've got David. We've got Milda, who's just listening for today. We've got Hot Dance. We've got John in the studio. Where are we going to go with this, guys? We've been talking about risk, and in fact, maybe do we want to take a risk and swap Talkaoke hosts?
Right, let me just go for a pee first.
Okay, Mikey's going to visit the facilities first. So we've got a quick interlude before we're going to change hosts, maybe change tack today. So we're not going to do final thoughts, but where are we going to take the conversation in the last few minutes, guys? What do you want to open it out to? We've got maybe Margot sort of searching. She's looking like she's inspired in the corner.
I'm just kind of thinking, I think it's an interesting point that you mentioned, John, about like COVID and kind of like what are the risks now? What am I supposed to do? I feel like observing how this whole pandemic has been, and I mean the COVID pandemic, not the mental health pandemic, which I think is also a big part of the same, like it running at the same time. I feel I'm just observing how we have adapted, how we kind of learned to live with risk in a way. And of course, maybe things aren't as clear as they could be, but I find it just quite fascinating how we don't really have a script for how to navigate through these circumstances. And yes, there were pandemics in the past, but none of these previous pandemics had like global warming to, kind of in the background, or global corporations, or advertising.
They didn't have...
John in the studio.
Sorry, they didn't have the instant communication either. That is one thing. But you see, I was talking to somebody yesterday who worked in a supermarket, and she said she felt more at risk now than she did when the supermarket first went into pandemic organisation, because you had queues, you had monitoring, and you had... Now, it's very difficult to monitor and get people to work. Also, I think people are saying, if the government doesn't obey its own rules, they're taking risks, why shouldn't we? I really do not think that there's enough guidance And we're going to, I think things are going to get worse because people are thinking, what the hell, frankly.
Okay, so yeah, you think the government maybe is a bit hypocritical in what it's doing almost?
I also think that, you know, growing, like, aside to all of this, and agreeing with you, John, actually, I feel like, you know, this is our, probably, for our generation, this is probably the closest to, like, proper, you know, risky kind of World War II or World War I situation. This is our risky time. And it's just a measure of where we are as a society, and I think that can help people find meaning in life. Just actually look at things and, you know, whatever it is, it's not war, it's something else, whatever, it doesn't actually matter. It is what it is. But if that helps us to see, you know, just kind of reset the balance and focus on things which are important, I don't think it's a bad thing in the end.
Okay, so maybe we've got, that's quite interesting. John.
Oh, sorry. You were saying this generation's equivalent of the First World War and the Second World War. It isn't, because our governments had a choice. The war and that. And there was a belief that we were fighting for something worth living for. That doesn't exist with the pandemic. It's nearer to the Spanish flu that came after. So there's a fundamental difference between those two things, I think.
Okay, so maybe that's... Margaret disagrees. I think maybe we should hold these thoughts because we're going to have a seamless transition of Talkaoke hosts. So if you've been... Seamless. If you've been thinking about historical parallels, what do you think this historical parallel is? Do you think it's unprecedented? Have you got some new ideas about risk that you want to throw into the table? We're going to try that out. I'm just going to play some music whilst we do. Changing.
Some people say this is like the antithesis, like it couldn't be more wrong. It's just a transition music, actually. Like you had to go there for a while. I think this begs for a big round of applause for Eddie, who kicked this off.
Okay, that is great stuff. Can people hear me okay? Because I've just plugged in for COVID safety. By the way, if anyone's watching out there, I've got my own headset, microphone. We've just switched over, but that means can people hear me on this one? Can you hear me? Anybody? No?
No.
No, they can't.
Well, we can hear you, but it's way too loud.
Oh,
It should be peaking somewhere.
That's
It
because
sounds like it's speaking badly.
I've got a louder voice than some of the than the previous
it needs
presenter.
much less gain.
Okay, right. Let's get on with this then. So big thanks to Evie. We're into the final hour of this conversation. Let me just hit the applause button. We have to do the applause button because we can't have live applause, sadly. I just want to say thanks to everyone that's contributed so far. It's been a really fascinating discussion and I've really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I mean, it's been kind of amazing. But the question now is, where do we want to go? For those of you not familiar with how Talkaoke works, suddenly I find myself in the middle and I'm not allowed to really to give my opinions anymore. I can recap where we've gone to so far. Katie, you wanted to say something? Come in there.
Who made the rule that you're not allowed to give opinions?
It's not so much a rule. It's just like if you're in the middle here and you start giving your opinions, then it's almost like, you know, driving the aeroplane into the hillside. You're about finding out what other people have got to say.
Fair enough. But just okay, you finish because I wanted to make a point before, but I'll wait.
Oh, no. Now is the time to make the point because we're ready to start this next session. So go for it. Katie, please.
We spoke a lot about the risks, what they are, and so on. But how do we mitigate them at this point? How do we resolve this issue? And I might have mentioned before, but I just want to come back to it because we live in an information age. We have found that disinformation is a huge problem, and lack of freedom of speech is also a huge problem. But I still feel that we lack an interest to develop a skill in finding that information or to evaluate that information. Because we are quite good at consuming it. We seem to have a knack to figure out when it's true or not, like with advertisements and such, but we don't apply those skills throughout our usage of information. When we read the news, when we read something about the world, we very rarely exercise these things, like skepticism and open mind, where both need to combine. We either pick one of them.
Okay, so when someone's trying to sell us a cream egg, then we kind of feel that we know we're on top of it. But when it comes to the information we get in the media, maybe not so much. How do we develop these skills? Both David and Eva raised the hand. And David, you were first, so I'm going to go to you first. Unmute yourself, please, David.
Okay. There is one of my theory is being a group of 5 or 6 people behind the computer. So basically, the ability to understand the media is better as a group rather than individually.
So if there's a group of you, then so we should all really be watching all media as a group, not as individuals.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a very practical suggestion about how to kind of evaluate what is misinformation, what's real information. Eva, what's your point?
I wanted to suggest that we should always follow the money and to see who funds what news and where the information comes from, who's behind it, and who's sponsoring that certain source. And the second one is I would suggest to turn off your TV for a week and see how that feels, and not read anything for a week and see how that feels.
Okay, have you tried it?
Here and start thinking for yourself for a bit.
Have you tried turning off your TV for a week or turning off your social media?
I don't actually have TV.
Yeah, so you need to get one to have it turned off.
Maybe I should do that and see what happens to me. No, I think always follow the money, and I think any information that you receive should be read as a text.
Right.
You should be always reading what's behind that information.
Okay, so
what are the aims to achieve?
Is money a good way to sort of work out what the agenda might be? I can see hands up behind me. I'm going to bring in Evie to start off with, just because. Evie, then, yeah. No, Evie, Eva, and there's too many similar names here. Sorry, I'm going to bring in Evie behind me. We've just heard from Eva, and then we're going to hear from Margot. So, Evie.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think now that I can give my opinions now, I'm no longer in the middle, that I do think that I do worry that if you do turn off from the news, if you do sort of, just, you do have people banding around, think for yourself for the week, but for me, I think you want to engage with the news to think for yourself, because otherwise maybe you're at the risk of kind of drawing up kind of fake theories by just sitting in your own room and then just like constructing something from your armchair, whereas the way that I read the news is that I'll try and read something maybe on the BBC and then the Guardian and then the Telegraph, and just see what they're all saying and see what other points of cross-referencing, who are they reporting from.
So instead of turning off the TV, turn on many TVs.
All the TVs you can find.
Yeah, I do turning off all the other TVs. I do listen to scientists and doctors who are censored. And those are, I think, the kind of quiet and silent voices that need to be looked into and actually given some time.
Okay, so there's people out there that are being censored. Anyone that's being censored, in a way, what you're saying, Eva, is that those people should actually be the ones we listen to more, in a way. I mean, we've heard a lot about bubbles and staying inside your own bubble, but when it comes to media, are we also staying inside our own bubble? Are they having a bubble? Margot, what's your point?
What is my point, indeed? My point is that, no, I think my point is that about TV TV. I think actually watching TV is not so bad. We're living in times where actually watching TV is good, because then everybody who's watching that TV channel, they're watching the same set of news. That news is not tailored to their specific algorithm, and I think that is.
So you think, in a way, TV is better than the social media news?
So, because then you can watch it, John can watch it, Evie can watch it, I can watch it, and Donald Trump can watch it, and we can have, you know, you can feel like, oh yeah, this is my agenda, or this is definitely not my agenda. But at least you're watching the same thing.
So we're in the same media bubble in that sense. We're not in our own media bubble.
And then you can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
However, if you don't have that, then you just watching news fed to you by an algorithm on Facebook, and then you have no idea what people on the other side of the argument getting so irate about.
John?
Well, I disagree with you in one way, in that because there's so much about the coronavirus on, I can't take any more. I take it off.
Yeah.
You know?
Oops, I meant. Yeah.
You know, I wonder what governments are getting past us with the Brexit negotiations and the other things that they should be questioning.
Yeah.
Every time you turn on the news, it's X number of deaths, and you will be doing this or you won't be doing that. I've had enough.
Okay, I've seen a message from Eva saying I have to leave for the next 30 minutes. If you're still there, Eva, give us a final thought before you go, something to throw into this bonfire before you go.
I'd like to encourage everyone to pay attention to censored voices, such as scientists and doctors, and why they're being censored, and what is it that they're trying to tell us, and why they're being quietened. I mean, there are reasons why.
Can you give us an example or throw something into the chat before you go of a censored voice?
He's talking on virome and microbiome. Very interesting. In fact, I posted it on my comment to your comment the other day.
Okay, can you put it into this link for this chat as well so we can see it? And we'll try and get it. Facebook people as well, comment on Facebook, because we are going out live on Facebook. So if anyone has got something to say, please do have a word. But thank you, Eva. Hopefully you'll be back again for the last, the last little bit, find out where we've got to here. So yeah, where are we going to go with this? Where do we want to take this conversation? Do we want to talk about? Go on, John.
I was just going to say one example of people being censored. Remember Galileo?
Yes.
The first person to say that the Earth went around the sun. Well, it was Galileo that proved it because of the of telescope. It probably was Copernicus.
Yeah, but anyway, going back to Galileo.
That is the whole point. He was censored.
Yeah, he was a dissenting voice.
And now, until recently, he has been the voice to listen to.
So, okay, so the dissenting voice becomes the voice to listen to. In the case of Galileo, maybe there are other personalities like Galileo that felt that they were speaking the truth, but were very much closed down and censored. Margot, were you going to say something?
I only wanted to say that I can't remember, you were talking about Galileo. And the voice being... Sorry, come back to me. Sorry, I've lost...
So we're talking about Galileo, we're talking about Copernicus, you mentioned, the Polish monk. Yeah?
I wanted to mention that apparently now really strangely as well, but maybe not strangely, there's a big movement for flat earthers.
Yeah.
We touched on that before. I think that kind of goes back to this whole thing of, people don't trust the media, they don't trust, and also science has been used to prove all sorts of different things, reputable things, and then like, oh, actually, no, that's wrong. We were just trying to address embrace the overarching agenda of the government or whatever. So people just feel maybe like they can't trust anything anymore. And maybe, we do have to go back to, I'm not saying flat earthers are right, I'm just saying they exist and there's more of them, and I think that kind of partly comes from, at least I can rely on my own experience and I really stand by my own experience and my own views, and people really give themselves a pat on the back because no one else will. So that's why.
Okay, so what are you saying about flat earth? There's kind of almost a legitimate skepticism about just kind of accepting the scientific orthodoxy.
I think so.
Okay, anyone else got any views about the flat Earth? Katie, come in on this one.
Well, as someone who studied physics, anyone who understands science to undergraduate level should be able to figure out that the Earth is not flat. It's not that hard. But there wasn't. What was the point before that? I totally
We were
lost
talking
it.
about Galileo. We're talking about
And the censorship.
Copernicus.
Oh yes, censorship.
Yeah.
Guys, just want to let you know, getting censored is extremely easy. I have been shadow banned on change.org. I've been censored on Facebook. Yep. Just for the last few months, we did experiment. I made a petition on change.org. I sent link to 10 friends. None of them could see the petition until the time for the petition ended. Only then it became visible to them. I sent emails to change.org and so on. It was a huge hassle. Nothing happened. I couldn't do anything.
Right. What was the
and
petition
and around 10 people said that okay, I managed to get the petition and I signed it. Until the very end of it, it showed only 3 votes, even though 10 people confirmed that they definitely voted for it. And so yes, that was the topic of the petition. It was I was suggesting that okay, the world is getting divided like crazy. We have enough information to figure out that UFO secrecy happened worldwide for 70 years. Why don't we all unite to figure out the truth?
Right. So what was the petition?
And demand, let's all of us demand our governments to give us all the information they have about it.
About
because
what?
the government is supposed to, about UFOs and unexplained phenomena. Considering the governments are supposed to work for people, if enough people ask, they have to comply, right? And yeah, it was too powerful apparently.
Okay, so you were censored when you tried to get a petition going.
Yeah.
About UFOs.
Yeah, so it's very easy.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of contacts online because what I wanted to bring a topic before where Margot raised a topic that TV might be a good option. I disagree. It's like picking one social media and saying Facebook is a good option or Twitter is a good option. TV is just like that. I think the best option for anyone is to make our own algorithm, to find the news sources, follow them, and make our own news wall where we see the sources that we trust, we see the sources that are not led by money, which are trustworthy, and we can check them out. That's what I did. I ended up knowing headlines between a week to months before they actually happen. I tell my friends, I tell my family what is going to be the news tomorrow.
Can you give us an example of that?
For example, news about life on Venus. I knew 5 days before from my sources on Twitter. I knew 5 days before that there will be news about life on Venus. It was discovered in 70s. They just released the information now because the satellite that collected that information was launched in 70s. So we had that information for 50 years. Many people knew decades before that it will be released. But from my sources allowed me to know it at least days before. For example, the news about coronavirus spread last year before even the beginning of this one. I knew again months before. So provided you make your own algorithm, and I think this is what we should do. This is how we should use our numbers. We should pick our areas of interest, research them, and then share them in talks like this one, where we find the information, where we are happy to share our sources. And if we find something hard to believe, we just go and check it instead of just choosing to believe or not to believe. I think this is what we need to learn to do. It will help to manage our risks and knowledge.
So it's about actually being open-minded and going and checking. No, it's not about belief or not believing, but actually entertaining some of these ideas and actually researching some of these ideas. I know we've overused it, but I really feel the need just to hit this sound effect again. Just let it run. Yeah. So what do other people think about this? Are we actually, are we actually open to these beliefs? Can we hear these things, can we actually find out about these things before they hit the mainstream media? Are these things going around? Are the sources with the least amount of money actually the most reliable? So those that are actually almost, let's say, citizen-led or led by enthusiasts, actually the most reliable sources. Margot.
I think, like in a way, what you're saying, Katie, is like, okay, TV is as bad as social media. I disagree with that. I think in TV, at least you know the scores on the doors. It's TV. it's Fox TV. You know what kind of stuff you're gonna get. You watching, I don't know, BBC. You know what kind of stuff you're gonna get. You know. You just know. That's you know. In social media, it's more like, is this person likely to be flirting with extreme right or whatever, and then the lead is kind of given to you for that. So I think there's a differentiation. But also, I think, oh God, what was I going to say?
Well, we were talking about, the information that's been out there, life on, or at least this, I think, without saying too much, the evidence of possible life on Venus was out there for many, many decades.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, I think it's a good idea that we all should get educated and informed and kind of like spend our lives, just pursuing the real facts as opposed to whatever media, social media, TV, or anyone gives us. But I feel like people don't have time to do it. They're just too busy living. And I think it has to be a calling of a few like mad people. I mean it in a positive way. People who are just like obsessed with, like artists, they've got a calling. They have to do this thing. They have to create a piece, a dance piece, or whatever.
Yeah, like Fatima, back to Fatima again.
Like he had to like come up to completely different philosophical concepts because he just needed to do that. But as a human being, maybe he wasn't as kind of switched on in that way. So there are some people for whom that's their calling to investigate the truth. But I'm just saying, for the majority of people living from day to day, what they've got to do.
Okay, so people don't necessarily have the time. I'm going to come back to you, Katie. I just want to put that out to other people as well. And I've seen you said in the chat, make your own algorithm, find your own sources, which I think is a good point. But I just want to bring in other people, especially the French contingent, David and Hortense. Have you got anything to say about this? Does it look different from a francophone perspective?
What's up?
Are we investigating, some of these controversies enough?
I don't know. One little thing about censure. Do you think that basically all the propaganda is the end of the world and basically we should kill ourselves should be censored or no?
Okay, what about these controversial opinions like we should all kill ourselves? Should those views be sent? What do you think, David?
I think there is a limit. There is a limit where basically promoting drugs and promoting weapons, there is a limit there because basically there is some serious risk.
Okay, so at some points, the people on the edge there that are promoting very extreme lifestyles or views, perhaps they do need to be censored, such as the cults that promote suicide or promote drugs. Anything for John, Evie in the studio? Oh, John, give us a final thought before you go. Could be on any of the things we talked about so far.
Well, actually, all I'd like to say is I really enjoyed it.
Me too, yeah. Surprisingly enjoyable, Talkaoke. That's the review, the latest review that's come out from John. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think to go back to the original topic, life, you have to remember, life is not risk averse. And a certain amount of risk actually leads to growth.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
balance things up a bit.
So you have to take risks in order to grow. You're getting another round of applause from Katie. So thank you, John. Thanks for getting involved in this. So some good points there. We're kind of almost into our final half an hour. Hopefully we'll get some insight and some kind of conclusion to this. See you later, John. There are some just hangers-on outside there, but rather than invite them in, they kind of got scared away from the UFO of chat there. But yeah, Margot, what are you going to say?
I was going to say, I've got a question. How people have been with, obeying the COVID rules? Have you been taking risks? Have you been partying? Have you been inviting more than 6 people to your house? Like,
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like, in a way, it's a real bad thing, COVID. It hasn't directly or anyone close to me. Therefore, I can't. Something in my head, because it's not like a bubonic plague. You can see, oh my God, this person's got, you know, it's not that horrific on their surface. So I think in my head, the coping mechanism says, I can't see it, therefore it's semi-real, maybe it's not real. Therefore, I find myself thinking more risky thoughts by the kind of, you know...
Right, so you're saying you're, in a way, because it's not that present in any graphic way, you're tempted to disobey the rules. But I will say that we are going live on Facebook. I don't know if there's any chat or comments from the Facebook audience. Okay, mostly coming from them, yeah. But, I mean, we are going out live, so I will say that, but the question's been put out there. Do people feel the need to adhere to these laws or to these guidelines, restrictions, whatever you want to call them? Do people feel that it is something that you can strongly adhere to? Was there a point there from you, Evie?
Yeah. Maybe it's more linked to John's point when he just left, but it's not... I think it probably you could read into that, but I think I was my friend was reading a book about risk. I think it's quite an old one now, The Black Swan, which is I think is supposed to be quite a famous one about risk.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that there's you have the quote like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You're like, oh, if you get through this, it will make you stronger. So, and as a society, will we be stronger as a society?
Yeah.
But apparently, actually, as a general kind of research point, if you're kind of, physically or mentally, like, strong enough to get through it, you will get through it, but you will be weaker as a result at the end of it. It just might be you're stronger than the rest of the people who can get through it. So maybe that idea of being strong enough to get through something is a bit of a fallacy, which is kind of sad because I think I live my life by, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Not that I've had like a horrible life, but just it was kind of, maybe I've just lasted, but I'm a little bit weaker as a result.
So the maxim, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is perhaps a little inaccurate according to your scientific research.
And that probably is true for, I don't know, but that is true for some people, for the young people who maybe are heavily disregarding COVID rules, or maybe aren't disregarding them at all, but unfortunately got it, and then they've ended up with long COVID. Like, I can't believe I want to follow the rules because I feel like I feel like it's my part to play as a citizen, but also because if I lost my sense of smell personally, I think that would be mentally although small, but also quite a big impact on my life. So I have that fear that would be an impact on me.
Okay, so there's a lot of things there, what doesn't kill you doesn't necessarily make you stronger. It could make you weaker. Are we back to the at risk, Margot?
I think about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's easy to say for people from the outside. When you are that person that's being spoken about, you don't always see things like this. And maybe from perspective of time, it is true. But I think the whole problem is that we can't see things objectively when we are like the main protagonist of whatever the hell is going on. So, for instance, I can say, my mum, she's suffering from mental health, but she doesn't understand that this is making her stronger, actually.
Is it making her stronger?
Potentially, yes. I think potentially, yes. She is, she is more resilient to some things, but other people maybe would find harder. But she doesn't see like this.
I mean, it's interesting you touched again on mental health, and mental health has been something we've talked about throughout this conversation. It seems there's a strong, very, very strong connection between the idea of risk and mental health. I feel that needs to come out a little bit. I just want to bring Katie back in, though, because I did stop you for a second when you wanted to come in earlier. But I guess you've got something to say. Right now we need you, basically, we need a bit of extra kind of, a bit of extra input into this conversation. So Katie, what were you going to say?
I really forgot the point I wanted to make, to be honest.
Earlier on we were talking about when I did sort of go around, what were we talking about? We were talking about, I guess, this idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, about the restrictions. How well are you following the restrictions? Are you actually adhering to these government guidelines? Are you bringing more people into the house? Do you care about it?
Well, I've had very unusual childhood, pretty hard. Got kicked out of home at 17 and almost died at 3, and a lot of other stories. And it was a very painful thing for me for a couple of decades of my life until I actually grew strong enough where I realized that it did make me stronger, and it was one of the best things that happened in my life. But it was a journey. I mean, I didn't think that immediately during the event and immediately after. It was after many years of reflection, comparison with other people, where I realized that, okay, maybe because of that, it makes my life easier now. After all of those incidents, all these risks nowadays, it seems almost nothing in comparison. But it's a very individual thing. I found many people go through very similar events, but they come out very different. And again, I think what we need to figure out is how to, for the last, I think, maybe 10, 15 years, what has been declining is our interaction with each other. It's our openness to discuss topics we disagree about. And I think now is a great time to develop those skills again. And a new generation is completely lacking them. It's like, if I disagree with you, it's totally, let's cancel you out, instead of listening and, you know, arguing with you and changing your mind instead. It's like we forgot the power that we have in persuading each other. I think that whether we're talking about COVID, flat earth, or UFOs, or whatever topic you want to pick, we need to learn to listen and to evaluate the information. It's one thing for some reason where we seem to be almost afraid of doing. It's like we want someone else to, you know, chew all the information and spit out the result for us, and then we end up complaining that we don't like the result, or we disagree with it, or we don't believe it. I don't think it should be a topic of conversation at all. I think if we're talking about beliefs instead of the truth, we are wrong at the very start. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, so in a way, what I'm going to take, there's a couple of points. First of all, the first one, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger eventually, I'm going to take. And also, this thing is like, start from the point of view that actually I'm wrong. How do I show that I'm right when I start off as I'm being wrong, rather than I'm start off as I'm being right? I just want to come to David. David, it looks like you're running out of battery there, David. So running out of bats, and we are all bats. So can we get a final thought from you before you finally fade away there, David? Or is it too late? Have you gone? Maybe the microphone, there's not enough power there to power the microphone, but I'm just going to give you in absentia a round of applause for joining in. Hopefully you can come and at least give us a final thought on the chat. Where do we come from it? Evie, Margot, Milda as well, and Hortense, the silent partners in this. Give us a comment. This is in a way the autumn of this Talkaoke show now. We've been through a lot. It's now we need these fresh voices, these fresh ideas to come in. Evie.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like I've reduced my amount of risk taking as I've got older, and I feel like I'm sometimes surrounded by a lot more people who I think take a lot of stupid risks.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of a stupid risk?
I worry it's my male. I have some friends who have been on here before, so I don't know if they're going to join. So shout out to them if they are. But I feel like they take a lot of risks that really annoy me. So I think the other day we were having like a fire in our garden, and they just made the fire so massive, and it made me really angry. So why are you taking this risk? But annoyingly, it was fine and nothing burned down. So they were right to make such a big fire, but it really made me quite angry because I wouldn't take that risk. And I wonder, as I've got older, whether I become less of a risk taker. Is that to do with getting older? Is that to do with becoming a woman? Is that to do in society? Is that just my own personality kind of slowly, I don't know, solidifying into something? And it makes me it makes me wonder a lot of things about that.
I mean, there's also, I guess, a question about the fact that because this incident didn't lead to disaster, does it mean these people were right to make this huge fire?
Maybe not. Maybe that's a problem about risk, is that people think that it's like a direct link. If like something doesn't happen one time, it will never happen the other time. But maybe it was a 2% chance that they would have been fine, or a 10% chance, and they were fine that time, but they wouldn't the 90% time. I don't know, but it fills with me with this kind of sense of injustice that I can't explain.
Okay, so getting annoyed about young men setting fire to things. There's so much in that. Margot, what's your point?
I just wanted to say that recently we did Talkaoke with young people, and somebody there on that Talkaoke said, a young person, she said, I like going to school because that gives me a sense of purpose and control and direction. Which, of course, if you're a free thinker, it's like, what are you doing? Why do you need school to tell you what to do? You should think for yourself. But the truth of the matter is, some people's lives are so full of uncertainties, going back to what you said, Mikey, and they just need a bit of structure. Whether that's the best thing they can get, whether that's the best type of structure they can get, I don't know. But that's what people crave.
So a little bit.
We are kind of sheep following whoever presents their agenda in the most, I don't know, in the best way.
We need some order in the chaos.
Yes, but also I think go back to Eddie's point about is it something that develops with age? No one who takes so many risks. I think maybe yes, you can pick your battles, and also when you're a young person, you don't really understand you don't understand the value of life or effort or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like you go to school, you get that grade, oh fucking good here, whatever. That is not real life. That is just really kind of a controlled environment. So we don't really have that kind of. We don't have all these thoughts running through our heads. Oh, what is my landlord going to say if this certain thing applies? What about this person next door? If I chat with them, maybe you don't think about those things. So yeah, I think it's an age thing.
Okay, David's come back on. Looks like you're running out of batteries. Are you going to give us a final thought, David? Unmute yourself first of all. Yes.
Why not?
Come on.
No, hello. Okay. Sorry, I'm on my phone. So basically, I just moved to the living room. But there is no reply. So
Oh, you can't hear you. You've lost. You've gone all muffled.
Muffled.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, life is a risk. Somehow, obviously, I don't even bicycle because basically my dad was on there to basically secure me riding the bicycle. So basically, I don't have the taste of it. But I drive a little bit, but basically I will not do more than 1 mile. So basically, this is the kind of I am scared of anything at speed. So, and I think that's come to education. I think I miss my dad for that a little bit. So basically, it's like risk taking. I've been working in building sites, and this is a very, very dangerous environment. I'm telling you, you have to be careful, and your brain have to be conscious of the risk all the time. Because basically, yes, it's a matter of life. You can lose your life at any second, or you lose the limb. So somehow, safety is a community thing. Safety is like we take it, but they call it like I don't know, I've been reading some stuff about like a social engineer. So basically there is people who are learning about like how we behave in groups and everything. So basically somehow we might have to listen to them and find out what's less risky. But basically, anyway, life is a risk. Meteorite could happen anytime. So you could have a meteorite landing on your garden at any point. And you might be under the meteorite. Anyway, sorry, big thoughts. That was my last thought.
Thank you, merci. So many things there. I don't know really what's this idea of the social engineer or understanding society from a scientific perspective. I think is very interesting, but also this idea of like everything we do is a risk. You know, whatever we're choosing not to do something. The meteorite risk Katie's mentioning there as well. Maybe we can talk about that. What is the meteorite risk that we are facing Can we do anything about it? Maybe live underground? I don't know. Where do we go? I sort of feel we are. I know we've still officially got 22 minutes to run, but I sort of feel like after 3 beers, we're kind of moving into that final kind of passage here. And I will also encourage Hortense and Milda that have been listening, I'm sure, and absorbing all of this to come into this. This is really your final chance. But I sort of feel like, and I don't think anyone would admonish us for sort of like moving into that final thoughts section of this event.
Taking a risk.
Oh, Milda has come online. Hello, Milda. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. For the final thoughts, what I can say, I know that sometimes it looks very fearful to think about what risks we're taking in our lives, but it's very important in the end of the day to think about it. Is that risk was worth it to live that day? Or maybe it's actually the only thing which you needed to understand, to be happy about. If you're not taking risks, we living a comfortable life, and what's point of that without going for our happiness, just sitting in the corner and waiting? There is one very good book which I'm reading now, The Chicken Soup for a Soul. That's amazing one. I got some ideas to help myself and maybe others to not to fear our risks and go for it. My advice would be that's amazing point. Take a sheet of paper, sit, write all things which you can't, and bury them. You know, life without things which we can't do, it's worth living.
Okay, so
without
just
fear.
Get that piece of paper with exercise we can all do
right
now.
And let it go, those things. Just forget about things which we can't, and go for those which we want. And dream about.
Okay, so I mean, but there's also an implication there, Milda, that those that are more comfortable, those that are more secure, will find it easier to take risks because they've got, in a way, this comfortable safety net, be it a safety net or a sofa or something else to fall back down on. Is that the case? And does that mean that those that are, in a way, that have got less, have got more to lose in taking risks, or at least a harder surface to fall down on, to carry on the analogy? So these are all questions, but also maybe if you can put in the link about chicken soup for the soul into the chat so we can all see it, and it'll be interesting as well just to see what the things are that we can and we can't do. Thank you, Milda. So I guess that's, we are starting to get into that final thoughts kind of phase. So maybe it's time to do some interesting thoughts there about taking risks, about who can take risks and what are the fears and what are the obstacles, let's say. Katie?
I just wanted to share a story about a risk I took.
Yeah.
In my early 20s, I started an IT company back in Lithuania. And in Lithuania, IT market is extremely oversaturated. There are more IT shops in Lithuania than there are in UK, which is ridiculous, but true. And everyone was saying that what I'm doing is extremely stupid and there is no chance of success. And why the hell am I even wasting the money and risking it? And my point of view was totally different. I said, like, okay, I'm not like, I understand that the chance of success is extremely low, but at the same time, it's a lesson worth learning. Maybe the things that I learn in doing it are some things that would be very hard to learn otherwise. And if I look at it at the same situation from the point of view of a lesson, then the risk seems to be much lower, because independently of whether the company succeeds or not, I still learn something.
Yeah, so it's not just about the outcome, it's about the process as well.
I think it's about point of view. It's like the situation is the same, the outcome is the same, whether it's a risk or not is how I decide.
Yeah.
It's what outcome I'm looking for. And it's something we can manipulate, just very few of us practice it. And the thought for the end, because I talked a lot, will be very short. It's a short saying we have in Lithuania: those who don't take risks don't pop the champagne.
Okay, so if you don't take the risk, you don't get to pop the champagne. Okay, so we're getting the final thoughts in. Popping the champagne. We'll be popping the champagne because I feel like we've taken a risk with this whole thematic, and we've succeeded because I think we've learned a lot today. But maybe it is time to get those final thoughts from other people before we finally pop the champagne. We don't have any champagne here, but maybe we need to go to the off license and get some. Let's get some final thoughts. Hortense, have you got anything to say? Come in on this one if you've got anything at all to say. It's been a very insightful conversation. Margot, have you got a point there?
I would just like to end on, speaking of risks, I think heading for no deal Brexit, so good luck to us all.
Okay, so we won't be popping the champagne. If we do, it will be a it'll be fizzy tears juice. It'll be Kentish champagne rather than from the Champagne region of France. We're going to be drinking a homemade champagne.
That's a risk.
That might be a little bit more risky. Yeah. So we might. Some of those outcomes might not be good, but what about the process of having that important discussion about our membership of the European Union? Is that more important than the final outcome? Any other final thoughts? Milda, have you got a final thought there? You've come back online again.
The only thing, I mean, for the final thought, I'm actually looking straight away for this book to read. This is amazing read, very deep, meaningful, and for all of you, I recommend for your deeper understanding. I don't know, it's just that, and yeah, as before, I mentioned it. Be brave. Don't be afraid to take a risk, because in the end of the day, maybe it's the thing which you was looking for, the passion, understanding.
What is the biggest risk that you've taken that's come off, Milda?
I think, as I was thinking before, in general, what risk I was taking most for my life, to come here in London. Yeah, and I was very shy person because I have eye disease, which I never knew about in Lithuania before, and now I am better. I was scared of going to work and work long hours, but now I'm okay. I'm happy that my vision got better, and that's I'm very proud about. Before I thought, okay, this is a big risk.
Yeah. So you're coming to London.
That's my biggest fear. But I manage it, and now I'm more than happy to share my story.
Okay, so you took a risk in coming to London, and you've managed to address this eye disease. Let's get some final thoughts. Eva has come back to life. Let's maybe get a final thought from you, Eva, if you are back on there, because we are just wrapping this up now. So it'd be nice to get a final thought from you, as you contributed so much to this and given us so much of your insight that I think I personally have appreciated. Eva?
Thank you. I don't know what you guys have been talking about for the last half an hour.
Oh, just chit chat about Galileo and Nietzsche and stuff like that. You missed it, but you know.
Yeah, well, my last thoughts would be to be open-minded and to not buy into everything that you're being told, because we have been deceived in past, in history. You have to not look that far. So be critical. Have a politics of suspicion is my advice.
Yeah. Doesn't that make us all a little paranoid though, Eva?
I mean, critical thinking, really. And follow the money and see who funds the newspapers and who funds that.
Yeah.
What about who makes the money?
Well, I just would say at this point, you know, like, what's the word? Fair disclosure, that this particular event is funded by the Listening Channel, which is run by a guy called Joel Kahn. Look him up and find out everything you can about him. He got his money from the Arts Council of England. Although it has been spread very thinly to run this show, I think he will be fairly in agreement to say. But you know that we're all bats, exactly, and that's the name of the channel. So you know,
it's amazing that you're doing what you're doing. I think it's really
thank you.
Have voices, and so we can learn from each other.
Oh, well, absolutely. That's what it's all about. And we've learned a lot from you, Eva, tonight. So thank you so much for joining. I'm putting it out there for those final thoughts, because we are just about to close this down. I've just got a message from the mysterious Black. No final thought from Black because they are having dinner. But any final thoughts from, and I'll say that also to Facebook. If you're watching now, 3 hours later, thank you. And put your final thoughts in the comments box on Facebook. Any other final thoughts? Margot?
Yeah, I just want to ask everyone, I just want to go back to that question, but tonight is, like someone said, it's the last night to do an illegal gathering. Tonight is the last night.
Oh, well, it would be legal, I suppose.
Sorry, legal, exactly.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is going to be illegal. So tonight's the last time to kind of go off with a bang before this not exactly lockdown restrictions. And I just wanted to ask what people are doing.
Okay, what are you doing for that final legal socializing? Are you doing some legal socializing tonight, or are you going to carry on as normal? Any final thoughts? Any final socializing ideas? Any plans for tonight? That goes out to everybody. Anybody? No, nothing from David. Katie, any plans for the final night of legal socializing?
Well, just not much, to be honest. No plans in that regard, but the plans are to look for what kind of socializing would be legal throughout the stages of lockdown. It's after this talk, like in this talk, I got an idea that maybe I'll have a conversation with you later, but maybe there would be an interest in people to find some space to discuss the news or the things that are coming out, because this is the thing that people have many different opinions, and I think this is where we should try to become a community, because I think it would make us even feel better about the risks if we would each help to gather information about each other's risks, because sometimes we may be too biased to figure out the truth ourselves.
Yeah. How are we receiving this media, and is there that space to actually absorb some of the things that are coming through?
I don't know of any, like social media is too much censorship. So a part of like these Zoom meetings or talks, I can't think of much else. That would be both legal and effective.
Okay. Eva's putting some more links for us to have a look at of some censored people. Do you agree with this, Eva, that there should be some space to actually collectively absorb what we're getting fed in the media?
I agree. I completely think that these kind of platforms are very important when we're discussing stuff and uncensored stuff, and we are not being censored as we speak, so which is really important.
Yeah. So far, we'll have to see how the Facebook video goes and how long it stays up there. Any other final thoughts from anybody? Evie at the back there.
I was going to say, actually maybe to really link back all the way to the beginning when Margaret was gave probably one of the first thoughts of the talking table was she's talking about taking a risk of, I think it was promoting immigrants in arts in UK theatres. And I thought actually that's probably one of the biggest risks you can take, which is taking a risk not for yourself but on behalf of other people, because you don't actually have a payoff. And I thought that was quite a good challenge that I noted to myself. Is maybe take some risks for other people as well.
Okay, so taking a risk is not just about your skin in the game, but other people's. And yeah, I think there were some points during this whole discussion where we actually talked about the social risk, or not just considering individuals, but considering us at large, and how we're assessing this risk. We talk about these individual points, but actually we're a society, so. Are we taking risks for others, and what does that mean? Maybe that's food for thought for the next session. I feel like it's time to play, unless anyone's got any final comments, and it is... Okay, yeah.
So our next event is happening online, and it's going to be Aberfeldy Live, which is a show live from Aberfeldy Street, which is where we're based in Poplar.
When is that?
And that's on Thursday, 29th of October from 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. If you're around, come along. We're still trying to figure out what's the safest way of doing it and the most kind of interactive and live way of doing it. It's definitely happening online, but maybe in person as well. Also, just to put it out there, we are looking for people to train as Talkaoke hosts. I think some people on this call, we're kind of having some semi-conversations.
Yeah.
We're just interested in how they talk and what they bring to the table. So, but that's also something that we're doing. So let us know.
Anything else happening with the people speaking the next few?
And tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
Tomorrow something is happening, and this is our brand new project, and a very experimental one at that as well. It's the Wick Speaks tour, and it is what it is. It's a Hackney tour, a Hackney Wick tour, which is going to happen online. But also it's going to be interactive kind of in different places around Hackney Wick. But of course, we're not encouraging people to be out there with us because of different things. But if you happen to be out and about in Hackney Wick on your phone, on Zoom, wanting to chime in and discuss with us themes of community, spaces, regeneration, security and leisure, and partying around Hackney Wick, and even if you're not from Hackney Wick, come along.
Okay.
2 till 5 tomorrow. Wick Speaks. Go to our social media. It's all over there.
Okay, so that's a great point at the end there. Great gratuitous plug. Thanks everyone for listening. I think it's time to hit the round of applause and hit the theme music, and time to say bye-bye. Thanks so much. Thanks to Rick on the knobs. And thanks to everyone that's joined. Thank you to those listening on Facebook. Whoever you are, please comment, come and get involved. We're open to whatever you've got to say. It's been fun, it's been a good one. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.